When most people think of American earthquakes, they think of California, the famous San Andreas Fault, a place where earthquakes are expected. But what if one of America's most dangerous fault lines isn't in California at all? What if it's hiding in the middle of the continent, thousands of miles from any tectonic plate boundary? Beneath the quiet farmland of Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky lies a hidden fault line that has puzzled scientists for more than 200 years. A fault so powerful that it once made church bells ring in Boston. A fault that caused the Mississippi River to flow backward. The hidden fault responsible for these earthquakes is known as New Madrid Seismic Zone. It lies beneath America's heartland, stretching across several states in the central United States. At first glance, there's nothing unusual about this landscape. No towering mountains, no dramatic cliffs, no visible cracks running across the ground. Today, millions of people live, work, and travel above it without ever realizing what's beneath their feet. Unlike California's famous San Andreas Fault, New Madrid sits more than 1,000 miles from the nearest tectonic plate boundary. Almost every major earthquake on Earth happens where tectonic plates collide, pull apart, or slide past one another. But New Madrid doesn't. It's one of the world's most unusual seismic zones. So why is one of America's most powerful earthquake regions hidden in the middle of a continent? To answer that question, we have to go back more than 200 years, to a cold winter night that changed the American landscape forever. On the cold morning of December 16, 1811, just after 2:15 a.m., the silence of the American frontier was shattered. Without warning, the ground began to shake, not gently, violently. Near the small town of New Madrid, Missouri, one of the most powerful earthquakes in American history had begun. Witnesses described the ground rolling like ocean waves. Massive cracks split open across the landscape. Trees snapped and fell as the earth lurched beneath them. For many people, it felt as though the world itself was coming apart. But the disaster wasn't over. Over the next 3 months, 2 more massive earthquakes struck the region. Together, they formed one of the largest earthquake sequences ever recorded in the eastern United States. The shaking spread astonishing distances. Homes trembled hundreds of miles away. Church bells reportedly rang in Boston. People in Washington, D.C. felt the ground move beneath their feet. For a young nation that had never experienced anything like it, the earthquakes were almost unimaginable. But the failed rift is only part of the story. More than 2 centuries after the New Madrid earthquakes, one question continues to puzzle scientists. Could it happen again? The answer isn't as simple as many people expect. Every year, hundreds of small earthquakes ripple through the New Madrid Seismic Zone. These tiny tremors are a reminder that the fault hasn't gone completely silent. Yet when scientists measure the movement of the ground using highly precise GPS instruments, they find surprisingly little motion. Some geologists believe stress is still slowly building beneath the region. Others argue the fault may be gradually becoming less active over time. For now, the evidence points in different directions. And that's what makes New Madrid one of America's greatest geological mysteries. 200 years may seem like a long time, but in geology, it's barely a moment. One of the most remarkable consequences of the New Madrid earthquakes was the dramatic transformation of the landscape. Massive landslides crashed into the Mississippi River, temporarily disrupting its flow. Some eyewitnesses even reported that parts of the river appeared to flow backward. But that wasn't the only change. Entire forests were submerged as sections of land suddenly sank. In northwestern Tennessee, a brand new lake formed almost overnight. Today, it's known as Reelfoot Lake. More than 2 centuries later, it remains a lasting reminder of the immense power of the New Madrid earthquakes. If an earthquake could create an entirely new lake, what kind of fault was powerful enough to reshape America's heartland? If the New Madrid Seismic Zone isn't located along a tectonic plate boundary, then why does it exist at all? To answer that question, we have to travel back nearly 750 million years, long before dinosaurs, long before the first plants covered the land. North America almost split apart. Powerful forces deep within the Earth stretched the continent, opening a giant rift through its center. For millions of years, the crust slowly stretched, cracked, and weakened. But then, everything stopped. The forces driving the rift faded, and the continent never broke apart. The rift failed. Yet the scars it left behind never disappeared. Deep beneath America's heartland, ancient fractures remained buried beneath layers of rock. Most of the time, they remain completely silent. But as stress slowly builds within the North American plate, those ancient weaknesses can occasionally slip, triggering earthquakes hundreds of millions of years after they first formed. If another earthquake on the scale of 1811 struck today, the consequences could be far greater than they were 2 centuries ago. Millions of people now live across the New Madrid region. Major cities such as Memphis, St. Louis, and Little Rock lie within or near the seismic zone. Unlike many parts of California, much of the central United States was not originally built with powerful earthquakes in mind. Bridges, highways, pipelines, and power lines could all be affected. And because the solid bedrock beneath eastern North America carries seismic waves much farther than the fractured rocks of the West, the shaking could be felt hundreds of miles away, affecting an area several times larger than a similar earthquake in California. Fortunately, earthquakes of this magnitude are extremely rare, but the events of 1811 and 1812 remind us that they are possible. For more than 2 centuries, the New Madrid Seismic Zone has remained mostly quiet. Beneath the farms, forests, and cities of America's heartland, the ancient scars of a failed continent still lie hidden deep underground. Most days they remain silent, but the earthquakes of 1811 and 1812 proved that even the oldest geological scars can awaken. No one knows when the ground will move again, or whether another earthquake of that magnitude will happen in our lifetime. But New Madrid reminds us that some of Earth's greatest geological forces aren't always found along the edges of continents. Sometimes, they're hiding right beneath our feet.